Couple hours later, Wilson came out and opened the door of the old scallywag truck, and he smelled propane. He grabbed me by the feet and pulled me out. I woke up with the worst headache of my life. Wilson had just saved my life. The propane tank had run dry and we didn't know it. I just lit the thing and it went out while I slept, and the last fumes had just kept coming out. We never used the propane heater again. I replaced the Aspen job with the club at Copper Mountain, and we moved on to Park City by way of Steamboat Springs. We sang for free meals in a Mexican restaurant in Steamboat Springs called the Cantina and headed out for Utah. Park City was great again and couldn't wait for us to get back the next month. And that February, the Park City job was the same time that they showed the last MASH series on television. Remember that? Every bar in town had MASH parties, and you had to be dressed in MASH costume. I wore a dress and sang that night as Klinger. Wilson wore surgical scrubs. What a funny night. Wilson and Pearl and I made it back to Nevada City, and I had less than a week to prepare for the same trip for the month of March. Wilson couldn't go in March, so I would be alone again. I think my drinking and the propane heater combined had scared Wilson. He never said, but I think that was part of his decision. March was cold and lonely, but I wrote a lot. I write when I'm alone. I wrote a great song in Leadville, Colorado about an old outlaw running from his past. I didn't know it at the time, but that song would play an important part in my future. Life can dish out more than you can handle at times. And if you let it get to you, you can go downhill quick. Emotionally, we are all very, very fragile. No matter how strong we seem, the little annoyances can add up and cause the strongest and the bravest to crumble. I pushed myself too far that winter, and my body couldn't handle it. The cold, the alcohol, and the aloneness crept in, and by April I was pretty much of a basket case. Remember, I'd been on the road now for almost 13 years, nonstop, and my love life was not very conducive to sanity. I have always said, when you live this type of lifestyle, it's like living 10 lifetimes in one. It's like being catapulted through time and space. You're never in a town more than 3 days at a time. You're constantly alone and reaching out to strangers for everything that represents safety and security. I met and spent time with 2 different women that winter, and both times it saved my life. But I kept going like the Energizer Bunny from town to town with a permanent snow cloud hanging over my truck. I made it back to Nevada City and still had April to go. When I got to Park City in April, I had pneumonia again and was very sick. I called Debbie, and she said she would fly out and help me drive back to Baltimore. She flew into Salt Lake City, and I felt like a lifeboat had just picked me up after treading water in a hurricane for 4 months. The road.